We had a long talk about the Bluecoats sidechain gaining, and then we just had an email about Bluecoats copying Leander. Let's go for the hat trick. Good afternoon. To start strong with the opinions, I personally think the Bluecoats have the strongest show this year in terms of design by a long shot, and I think the Founders Trophy is likely theirs to take. I'm curious though, what do you think the amount of rained out shows that the Bluecoats specifically are experiencing, as well as the other cores in their regional bubble, will have on their competitive performance? I've heard arguments saying the lack of judge feedback could be hurtful to the design team's ability to make meaningful changes. But I've also heard arguments that the added rehearsal time potentially added by less competitions will help them with cleanliness. I personally think both can be true, but I also think that people are overestimating how big of an impact this will have on them in the long run. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Thank you, Bailey Newton. Bailey, I'll take this one first before we give it to Aiden Spicer. And thank you for not mentioning the L in this one. I worry for those folks out there who don't properly check in. Years ago, basically pre-COVID, tour was longer, all right? And it's wild to think that it was longer than you could possibly imagine based on the way tours work these days. You, in essence, were on drum corps from Memorial Day to Labor Day. And that's very oversimplistic. It was based on the schedule. It was based on where finals were, because to a certain time, finals rotated amongst a number of cities, some glorious and wonderful, and some, please never go back there again. In fact, they would change the whole tour based on where finals were at. So if finals was in, let's just say Dallas or in Mississippi, then the Texas week was at the end because you were going that way. There was one year when drum corps finals were in the Rose Bowl. So everyone did the tour and ended up that way. So the tour used to change like that all the time. And it used to be that you moved in around Memorial Day, and then you didn't finish till around Labor Day. So you had so much time. The other thing about that is you had what they would consider pre-tour and regular tour. Or I'm maybe using the words wrong, but pre-tour was a regional tour because they used to have DCM, DC Midwest, for example, where the Cavaliers only saw Phantom Regiment and Bluecoats and the Colts and everyone else, Madison Scouts. They all competed against each other. And then they would have a regional or a super regional, and that would be DCM. And then you would have DCM champion. So the Cavaliers were the DCM champion for 2000, right? You had DCI West. I think you had DCI East. I'm not really certain what the Southern Corps did. They might have joined another tour, or maybe there was a DCI South. But as far as I know, that's how they broke it up. And then in the middle of the season or around part, then they began the national tour. And this is where some corps would stop, would say like, all right, we're just doing regional tour and then we're stopped. We can't afford it or blah, blah, blah. That's a whole other discussion about the regional tour model and whatever and the benefits of it. But then you would go on the national tour, and that's where you would get these big regionals, and that's where you would start to see the drum corps. There was a time when you would not see someone, like you didn't see all the time all the drum corps in San Antonio. That's not how it used to work all the time. Sometimes it would be Allentown or Drums Along the Rockies or some other shows in the swamp. Murfreesboro used to be a top 8 only show. Like, it was a whole thing. It was a whole thing. Regardless. So the reason I say this is tours used to be so much longer, and it wasn't out of the ordinary for a drum corps, like the Blue Devils, for example, to take a week off. And what that meant was they would do their show, and the last show was on Saturday, and they wouldn't have a show all week, and you would come out and see them on Thursday or Friday or Saturday, and they had put on a brand new closer, or they had reworked a percussion movement, or they introduced new costumes or flags or all this kind of thing. That was not out of the ordinary. It was in a longer season, so they could afford to do that. And a lot of drum corps did this. The Cadets did it. Cavaliers have done it. The Blue Devils have done it. I'm sure a lot of drum corps have done it at some point. They also used to take tours out of the country. In fact, 2000, the Cavaliers, I believe, they either went to Europe or they went to Japan or Asia. Somebody put it in the comment section down below. It was like, I remember going to DCI San Antonio, and the Cadets, they had, they were awesome and it was fun, and they did the tenor thing and everyone crazy, and it was like, that's the show. That's going to win. And no one had seen the Cavaliers. They come back from wherever they were in Niagara Falls, and it was just like, pow, pow, pow. They ended up tying the rightful champion in my eyes, but they ended up tying for the championship. That's like the third tie in so many years, or the second tie. I can't remember, third tie. But these drum corps would take massive times off, and they would learn. So this is not new. If the Bluecoats took some time off that was already built into their schedule to learn new music or to clean, that's all completely the way it goes. Some corps are trying to do a lot of shows, and that's how they're going to get better. I know that when I was doing drum corps stuff, there was always like, we just need 3 days off so that we can clean and get better. Because I honestly think you benefit more from the days off because you can get better. You can take the judges' comments, you can implement them if necessary, or change, make water, make easier, make it harder, whatever. You need that time to learn it and digest it and then perfect it. You can't do that if you're doing a show 3 days out of the week and you're traveling 3 days out of the week and you have one rest day. You got to sleep. You got to do your laundry, right? And you got to do shows. Now, do these added days negatively impact the Bluecoats? I don't believe so, because they were supposed to do that Whitewater show. It got rained out. And then they came out and did the show and popped that 82 or 83, the highest number for whatever. All right, they did that. And then they got rained out again, and then they just had a show, and they popped an 86.5, right? Is that what it was? When you are at the level and the tier where the Bluecoats are right now, and I'll let y'all decide how big that tier is, but it's obviously a select amount of drum corps. Both things are beneficial, rehearsal and competition. You want the judges' results. You want their input. You want to know what they have to say. And all that's important, but you also kind of know how the game works. When you're a designer at that level, you see what you need to change. You hear what needs to be better. Like, you know all these things. You have so many eyes and ears. You get a lot of input. Yes, you want the judges' input, especially from those that you know you will see at finals. I'm not saying that drum corps will ignore or just disregard commentary from judges that are new or judges that they know they will not see on finals week, especially on Saturday. But I'm also not saying that they don't do that. Now, where I think it could impact a Bluecoats or any other drum corps has nothing to do with the numbers. It has nothing to do with the rankings, has nothing to do with the performance. It's the 3 minutes in critique that every drum corps gets with those judges. And those 3 minutes, we like to say, it's your 3 minutes. You can do whatever you want. You want to yell at me for 3 minutes? Go for it. That's great. I don't care. All right. Ideally, you've listened to the tape of that person, that judge, and you go in with questions, comments, concerns, and you say, I noticed you said this. Can you explain this? I noticed you didn't see this, la, la, la. Those 3 minutes can also be used to, my words, petition or steer the judge in the direction that you want them. Hey, you really missed an important part that was taking place on the field at this point. I know your attention was on side one. I would ask that in the future you watch side two, because we have a really cool effect going on, and I think that would help you better connect to the show, because you're talking about, it's not communicating the way it is, but you were looking at this and we were hoping this. So maybe next time, could you watch that, listen to that, hear that, and then if you still have that concern, then we know we need to look at that. What the Bluecoats are missing out on is that opportunity to discuss and explain, and again, kind of like point a judge in that direction. So to me, that's the biggest negative of missing these shows, which is why you see, and this is not my word, but it's the greatest word ever, propaganda. You see it from marching bands, you see it from drum corps, you see it from indoor winter color guards and percussions. Just today, where the Bluecoats explained what it is they were doing in their ending. That's propaganda, right? That's them going like, I need you to know how cool this is. And it is really cool. And it could be just them like, we just want to explain it. But the fact remains is when you see a drum corps put out social media and they're putting all this stuff out. Yeah, hey, this is our show, blah, 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 blah. And you know what? When you put out a video explaining why you don't have a concept and why you don't have a theme, but you think it's this, that's propaganda. Good, bad, whatever. I'll let you decide what you think. But critique is that opportunity for you to stump for your show, stump for your caption, and stump for all the moments that you want the judge to see and hear. And if you don't have that opportunity, that could negatively impact you. So to me, that's the biggest issue for the Bluecoats potentially missing these shows. But, I could be wrong. Aiden, what are your thoughts on that?
I agree with what you said. Like, Bluecoats had the strongest show in terms of design. Yeah, like I think they're in it to win it. We all do, or maybe not, but so they have had a lot of rained out shows, is what you're talking about. So with a design team that has lasted as long and as strong as the Bluecoats, I think that the lack of shows and judge feedback isn't necessarily going to affect them. I think that the Bluecoats designers they're likely very smart in thinking, and they probably know a lot of the feedback that judges might give them. I do think maybe this could have been a possibility with another drum corps whose maybe design team is newer or is first time together. So like maybe, but the Bluecoats design team, they've been together like they've been virtually doing a lot of the same things together for many years. So I think the idea of saying that they may possibly be affected by not having as many shows as everyone else because they keep getting rained out. I don't think that that is necessarily going to negatively affect them. But I do see both arguments, obviously. But yeah, personally, I don't think that's going to happen with a design team such as the Bluecoats. But yeah, maybe with a lower level drum corps who probably needs more judge feedback to make sure that what they're doing is setting them up for success. Um, but yeah, I'm not I'm not overly worried about it. I think they got it pretty figured out.